I recently became an owner here at the fort in Aledo, Texas, but that's not going to stop me from playing just like everyone else here at the tables. I don't want to spoil too much from this super exciting session, but I will let you know that later on in the night, I play a $6,200 pot here at a 1-3 table. Yes, you heard that right, and the craziest part is you won't believe what my opponent flips over at the end of the hand. Speaking of Texas 1-3, this isn't your average low stakes game. We buy in for a whopping $3,000 and sit down for the first hand with Jack King offsuit, and I raise it up to $15. We end up getting 4 callers, which means we're going 5 ways to a flop, which comes Queen 10-6 rainbow. I decide to bet out for $35 with my open-ended straight draw. We see a call to 35, and Steven in the big blind is going to go for the check raise. He makes it $125 to go. Obviously, I'm going nowhere. I unblock all of the pairs, so he easily could have a hand like Queen Jack, King Queen, Ace 10, something like that. I have King Jack, so I have the open-ended straight draw put in the call, and we're going to lose our 3-way. We're now heads up to the turn. The turn's a brick. It comes the 4 of spades. I guess it brings in some backdoor spade draws. Having the King of Spades in my hand is relevant because I block a lot of his bluffs. He fires out for $150, but still, I think my hand is just too good to fold. I decide to put in the call once again. In the river comes a brick. We don't make a straight. It's the 8 of hearts. Our opponent now slows down and checks, leaving us with a decision. I have King High on the river. There's around $661 in the middle. Do I go for a bluff? Well, what better hands would I be able to get to fold? Maybe a hand like pocket jacks, pocket 9s, pocket 7s. Ace King makes a lot of sense, raising the flop with a gutter, betting the turn, and then giving up on the river. So yes, I think there's a lot of hands that could fold here. I fire out for 2/3 the size of the pot, and we get snap called by a better hand. King Queen offsuit is going to take down that $1,500 pot. Nice check on the river there, Steven, making the maximum. The second hand starts off pre-flop with a $6 button straddle. There's a limp from Steven. I decide to make it $30 to go with my pocket 9s. We're going to pick up a bunch of callers, and the button completes as well. He has last action. Remember, when he puts out that button straddle, gets to see everything and then decide. He comes along. We flop ourselves third pair on a Jack 10 deuce board with 2 spades. The action checks through. I'm not going to take a stab. Too many hands that are going to get sticky and call us down. So the action checks through on the flop, giving us 2 pair now. The Jack of clubs on the turn. It's a bad 2 pair. I decide to check once again. Action checks through. On the river, which comes the deuce of clubs, I now bet out for $40 for a little bit of value. What value, you might ask? Well, some ace highs might get curious. It is Texas, so people still could have hands like 5, 6, 7s, and 8s and put in a call. If they have a 10, so be it. Gonna value own myself here. We see a call from the button. Both other opponents fold. I show my goods, and he mucks his cards. So a little bit of extra value there in that $200 pot, but it just shows sometimes you might think that your hand is not good enough to get some more money, and it turns out they will call you with worse. This next one is super interesting. I look down at Ace Queen of diamonds from the big blind. There's a raise to $20 and over to me. I decide to 3-bet him to $100. He puts in the call, and Steven on the button has last action. He puts in the call for $100 as well, which means we are going 3 ways off to a flop, which comes 4-4-3 with 2 diamonds. I decide to lead out into the field for $75, and both players put in the call. The turn comes the Jack of diamonds. Bang! We turn the nut flush. I decide to get tricky here and slow down and check. The logic is if someone has a worse flush, they're definitely going to bet themselves. Hands like pocket 3s, I want to pot control against. I don't think anyone has jacks. And if someone has a hand like ace 4 or 5-4, I think they'll put the money in as well. The action checks over to Steven on the button, who bets out for $275. And now to the decision point is, do I go for a check raise, which pretty much screams jacks full of 4s, or a flush, or do I just put in the call here hoping that he bets on the river? I decided to do that latter option and put in the call, and that brings in the third opponent. So looking like we're making the maximum here, keeping him along. A raise probably would have gotten him to fold. So an extra $275 in the middle there, and the river comes the deuce of spades. What was my plan on the turn when I called that $275? Well, it was to check it over to Steven and have him bet. However, I got the sense that when we picked up the third customer in the hand right across the table from me, I thought Steven might want to check behind, thinking that he would be scared of that guy as well. So in the hopes of not missing out on any value, I decided to lead here. What sizing do I decide to go? Well, I jam it all in for $22.50 effective. There's not going to be many bluffs. I guess the naked ace of diamonds would be one of them. Other than that, it's pretty much value, but at Texas low stakes, I don't expect many people to fold a 4 or a worse flush here. Unfortunately, we do not pick up the customer across the table from us, but Steven is in a tough spot. He goes into the tank for a while and then ultimately folds his cards. It appears he did not have a hand good enough to put in the call. If he made a fold there with 3 of a kind or a flush, well, I guess I'm a bad player and he is a goat for folding that. But as for now, we're gonna rake in a $3,600 pot. Let me know down in the comments, did I butcher this one? Maybe I did by shoving the river. Maybe I just check it over to Steven and he bets and then we shove. I don't know, that's above my pay grade. Well, let's get rewarded here in the next one. Under the gun with pocket kings, I make it $15 to go and we are gonna pick up 3 customers. Off 4 ways to a flop, which comes queen 8-3 with 2 clubs. I go for a $35 bet. Steven, our nemesis the entire vlog it seems, decides to raise me to $75, a very small raise. Does he have a nut flush draw? Does he have a set of 8s or 3s? Who knows? I have the king of clubs in my hand. I can back into a flush.
Round 2. This time don't fold, okay?
I put in the call and off to the turn we go, which comes the 10 of spades. He fires out for 125 and for a lot of the reasons I mentioned on the flop, I decided to put in the call here on the turn. My hand is still just too good to fold. Off to the river we go, which comes the 4 of clubs. Not exactly the best card because he will have some flush draws on the flop and turn that now make a better hand. So when he fires out for 250, I don't love it, but I'm getting a great price. Having the king of clubs is important because I block a lot of his club draws, but then again, that means he's probably gonna have 8s and 3s a lot. So maybe a hand like queen 10. I decided to put in the call and he shows us 2 pair. Queen 4 of hearts. The raise on the flop got more money in and then rivers me with the 4 of clubs. Nice hand, Steven. $960 headed over his way. All right, the $10 button straddle is on. I'm in the cutoff with pocket aces and we see a limp and a raise ahead of us. What a dream spot. I obviously have to go large here. I make it $75. We're gonna pick up a call from the middle position limper, aka Steven, and the button puts in the call as well. Off 3 ways to the flop, which comes 9-6-5 rainbow. Not exactly the best board for pocket aces. Both opponents are capable of having 7-8 being the nut straight, as well as pocket 5s, 6s, and 9s having a set. In between 2 opponents, I usually start with a check. It also helps that this board is disgusting, so I check it over to the button, who fires out for $75. No sense in raising here against sets and straights. We're just gonna get torched. So I put in the call and the turn comes the 7 of hearts. Could this board get any worse? The action checks over to the button once again, who decides to go for a little bit more value. $175 is the price. After a little bit of deliberation, Steven folds his cards, actions over to me. Now my hand's getting a little bit tricky. I'm getting a great price. It's $175 into a pot of $654. I think that's the only reason why I should put in the call. He's giving me every indication he has a better hand, but I have an overpair, can't lay it down just yet, and we river 2 pair with the 5 of spades. Now that I make 2 pair, it's not an automatic check. Sure, logic would say check inflow over to the button, but what if he checks behind with a hand like 9-10? Or maybe ace-9? What about 9-6 or 6-7? Or 9-7. Well, these are all hands that I beat, so I think leading out here could make some sense. If I lead here and get raised, well, it's obvious he has a better hand than me, and if he calls me, I probably have a better hand than him. So I fire out for $625, and the opponent goes into the tank for a while. We love not getting snap called. That means he doesn't have a hand that has us beat, but when he tank calls us, I show my 2 pair, and he mucks his cards pretty frustratingly. It looks like we got max value on that one. What do you guys think of my lead there on the river? I definitely think if I would have checked it over to him, he would have checked behind. Either way, a $2,000 pot at 1-3 is pretty absurd. 700 big blinds coming over my way. I put the $6 button straddle out in this next one and look down at ace-king offsuit. There's a limp, a raise, and 4 callers over to myself. Ace-king offsuit definitely good enough to go for a large 3-bet, and I make it $200 to go. Now logic would say if it's good for 30, it's not good for 200, but you forgot that we're playing in Texas. Well, at the fort to be specific, and action here is incredible. So yes.
Oh no, you see you brought Steven in.
3 players that decided their hand was only good for 30 and didn't want to put more money in now decide that they want to come in for 200. Just like that, we're in position on the button in an $860 pot, and we flop ourselves a gut shot to the nuts on a Queen 10 4-board. Marguerite, a lovely soul over here at the fort, decides to jam all in for $391, and that's not exactly what we want to see. Having the king in our hand, it's not so great because we block hands that we have beat, like King Jack for the open-ended straight draw. Most likely she has a hand like King Queen, Ace Queen, or possibly a set. Sets are a little bit harder because she only called the 30 bucks and called 200. You think she would have raised with pocket queens or tens, but nothing's out of the question and the action's over to me. Now, if I'm just putting her on a queen or one pair, we have 10 outs to win. Calling $391 into a pot that's $1,251 means I have 3.2 to 1 or 24% equity. 10 outs is roughly 40% equity, which means I'm getting the right price. However, against a set or two pair, I only have 4 outs, all those jacks, which means I'm only having 16% equity, which is below that 24% threshold. That's all nerdy talk. Sometimes I'm gonna have the equity, sometimes I'm not. I came out here to the fort to make a vlog. That means I put in the call, and we are going off to a run out. The turn comes the 6 of hearts, followed by the 5 of diamonds. There's no way that we're good. She shows a set, and sure enough, we are losing a $1,600 pot. But at the end of the day, it couldn't go to a nicer person. Nice hand, Marguerite. You made the vlog. The button straddle's on, there's a limp over to myself. I make it $35 to go with King 9 of diamonds. The 1 seat puts in the call, Steven calls as well. And we're also gonna get Oscar over there who puts in the call from the limp. On an 8-6-4 board with 2 diamonds, we are loving life. I have the second nut flush draw, but I'm out of position to a few players, so I start with a check. Player over in the hijack bets out for $100, and I could go for a check raise. However, he's liable to have some straights and 2 pairs and sets. Don't want to bloat the pot here with a draw. I just find the call. The turn is no help for us, so I start with a check once again, and the opponent is going to go for a large bet here of $200 into the $376 pot. Having just one overcard and a diamond flush draw, I debate my options here, either calling or folding. I think I'm behind in the moment. Something just feels a little bit off. I'm also not getting the greatest price, and if I just call here and brick, leading the river kind of looks like a bluff, and then if I check it over to him, he could just check behind as well. So I decide to fold my king high flush draw, making a disciplined fold, and the villain in the hijack shows us 7-5 of diamonds for the flopped straight with the diamond redraw. We were drawing pretty slim there to like 7 outs, or around 15% chance. Great fold by myself, likely saving me $200. We've now arrived at the hand of the night, but before we jump into it, I wanted to tell you guys again how excited I am to own a piece of this room. Since I made the announcement on March 6th, the fort has had an insane number of new players checking out the action. We had 13 cash game tables last Friday, along with a record-setting Friday free roll, causing there to be no open tables in the entire room and a wait list of over 30 people for the 1-3 cash games. I might be biased, but it really is the best place to play cash games in the entire world, and this next hand is definitely a good example of that. I look down at King 10 of spades from the cutoff the $6 button straddle is on, and who else but Steven raises it up to $25 from middle position. The player to my right puts in the call, and of course I'm going to come in for a 3-bet to $100. I love playing large pots in position. Trying to bloat it up here with King 10 of spades seems like a great idea, and Steven with a smile puts in the call. George on my right puts in the call as well. We lose the button who has last action, and just like that, we are going 3 ways to the flop, which comes King Queen 6 with 1 spade. When the action checks over to me, having top pair, backdoor straight, and flush draws, I decide to go for a $100 bet, and now the action's over to Steven. He puts in the call. Are we gonna get a call from George? Nope. He's done with it and mucks his cards, and we turn trips on the King of Hearts. $500 in the middle, and Steven wisely checks it over to myself. Now this is where the hand gets interesting. Do I check behind here? Absolutely not. There's some heart draws and straight draws out there. Now the only decision is how large do I want to go? There's $500 in the middle. I decide to go for $375, trying to charge the maximum versus a worse king. That being said, Steven is also capable of having a hand like ace queen and getting sticky. He also could have some straight draws like jack 10, ace jack, or ace 10. And yeah, let's not forget that backdoor heart draw as well. However, a lot of those hands go out the window when Steven goes for the check raise to $1,000.
Nice.
Did I mention the action here at the fort is insane? Yes, now we are in a tough spot. Well, it's not too tough. I have 3 of a kind. However, his raise here is signifying he's definitely going to ship the river. So I'm basically now deciding if I want to play for stacks. The answer is yes. I decide to put in the call with a lot of green chips, and off to a river we go, which comes the ace of spades. Now at first glance it doesn't seem like a great card because Jack 10 gets there. However, that's really the only hand that gets there with the ace of spades. Ace King already had me beat. Ace Queen I have beat. So when he jams all in for $1,800, it puts me in a very weird spot. If I put in the call, the pot will be nearly $6,000. However, let's think about all the hands that beat me and decide if I can ever make a fold. Ace King has me beat, pocket queens have me beat, pocket sixes, King Queen, King Jack. And that's pretty much about it as far as the bluffs. Maybe a hand like Ace Jack or Ace 10 that has some showdown value but decides to still turn their hand into a bluff. You could have some heart draws he picked up. All in all, it just seems like a weird spot. It's Texas. I can't be folding 3 of a kind. I decide to put in the call. If he has the goods, he's going to show it to me. He definitely shows his cards, but it's not the hand I was expecting. Ace 8 of clubs. Steven rips it in there. I think he was bluffing, but he had some showdown value. So yeah, that $6,200 pot is coming over my way, but not exactly sure if that was a bluff or a value shove. But yeah, that's just a testament to how good the games are here in Texas. You're taking down a over 2,000 big blind pot with 3 of a kind. Pretty bad kicker had me in a little bit of a nervous tizzy there on the river. Can't be folding though. Dealer, ship all those chips over to me, please. Let's go. After that monstrosity of a hand, we have a tower of black chips in front of us. I'm now sitting on a stack over $6,000. I'm in the big blind with pocket 10s. We see Robert on our left raise it up to $30. There's 1 call over to me. I 3-bet these 2 hooligans to 125, and Robert and Steven both put in the call. The flop comes ace-6 deuce with 2 hearts, and I fire out for $125. I should have the range advantage on this board. I think they are more likely to have pocket 6s than myself, but yeah, Robert puts in the call. Steven folds his cards, so it looks like we're not going to be taking any more of his money in this hand at least, and the turn gives us 2 pair on the deuce of diamonds. Pretty great card because now it's very unlikely Robert has pocket deuces, so I decided to fire out once more for $400. I still think there's a lot of hands I can get value from. Hands like King Queen of Hearts, King 10 of Hearts is one of those type of hands. If he has a weak ace, he might also just fold on this turn, but I'm not really trying to get an ace to fold. It's mostly getting value versus worse pocket pairs like 9s, 8s, and 7s, and then of course those heart flush draws. I would honestly prefer to see a fold from Robert, so when he puts in the call, not exactly the best news. However, the river is super interesting on the ace of spades. Definitely makes it a lot less likely Robert has an ace, but then again, what is he calling us down here with on the turn? I decided to go for very thin value, still thinking I can get called by some king highs and some worse pocket pairs. He calls me and has an ace, well so be it. I block bet the river for only 10%. When Robert puts in the call and I turn over my cards, he lets us know that we are good, so I definitely got max value in that one. An $1,800 pot coming over my way. He mucks it, and of course we also had him on the live stream for the maximum pain there. Nice hand, Robert. Thanks for donating to the vlog. Alright, that brings us into the last hand of the night. I look down at ace jack of clubs from the button straddle. We see a raise from Nate Dogg across the table from us to $25. Steven, George, Robert, and Oscar all put in the call, which means it's squeeze time. Let's raise it up to $175 with our suited ace. If everyone folds, we pick up around $150 worth of free money. But of course, it's Texas. People are going to find the call here. We pick up 2 of them, but no fear, the flop is here. King, queen, 5, bang, we flop the nut flush. Just when we thought our night couldn't get any better, we flopped the nut flush. It is a bummer we have the jack of clubs in our hand. We would much prefer one of the opponents to have that card, but still, I'm not complaining. This night can't get any better. I fire out very small here for $125. I do not want to lose anyone. Unfortunately for us, Steven folds, which means no crazy plays from him. But George on our right puts in the call. He's wise beyond his years though, so when the turn comes a jack of diamonds and I fire out small once again for $300, setting up a river shove. It's a pretty much no-brainer decision from George. He mucks his cards. It's only fitting that we wrap up this session with an $1,100 pot being shipped over my way. That last hand of the books, we rack up and head over to the cage. I cashed out for $7,400, so a profit of $4,400 in around 6.5 hours of play. Pretty insane if you might ask me, but then again, I've played at the fort a lot and it's just another night at the fort. The game gets crazy, and yeah, I'm super excited to share this video with you guys. If you haven't already been out to the fort in Alito, Texas, please make a trip out here. I'm usually there on Friday and Saturday nights, but the 1-3 action is insane every night of the week. If you made it this far, show your appreciation by hitting the like button. If you're somehow new to the channel, hit the subscribe button in order to not miss any of my future videos. Speaking of which, there's a few videos on your screen right now. Click one of those and I'll catch you in the next video as always. Peace!